This is the 9th and final scheduled press conference regarding the response to the wildfires in the Central Okanagan. Additional information sessions will be provided by each community going forward. Each local government and First Nation will tailor their communications to meet the needs of their community in the recovery phase of the response. Today I'm joined with West Kelowna Mayor Gord Milsom, who will be available for questions following the press conference today as always. And then we have our EOC Director, our BC Wildfire Representative, Fire Chiefs, and ESS Supervisor who's here to speak today as well. Today we'll be focusing on the current fire situation, updated information on structural damage, the next steps for those under evacuation order, and a look forward into what recovery looks like for the region. Before I hand it off to our subject matter experts, I want to express deep gratitude on behalf of our regional communities. Firstly, thank you to the media for attending these press conferences and sharing essential information with residents. We greatly appreciate all the time you've dedicated to keeping people updated during these emergencies. Secondly, I would like to extend my sincerest thanks to our experts. Their presence and knowledge have provided us with a sense of calm amidst uncertainty, and their stories from the front lines have inspired us all to keep going. There's not enough words to convey our appreciation for the ongoing efforts of the frontline teams, including our ESS volunteers who have worked diligently to protect and support people in a time of crisis. And finally, I want to thank each of you that are watching today and everyone that was affected by these wildfires. This has shaken each of us personally and collectively. There have been and will continue to be challenges that we need to work together to overcome, and I want to thank each and every one of you for your patience and kindness while we work through this together. We also can't forget what was saved in this wildfire event. Countless homes were saved and over 10,000 properties were evacuated safely with no loss of human life. This is due to the coordinated efforts of the EOC and the on-the-ground first responders. Since our last press conference on Saturday, another 1,000 properties were downgraded from evacuation order, allowing residents to return to their homes. However, there are still 2,381 properties under evacuation orders, and we understand your eagerness to get home. Over the past few days, I've heard from residents who are frustrated about the remaining orders. We recognize that this is a challenging situation, and as the chiefs have mentioned, the EOC does not make the decision lightly to keep orders in place longer than they have to. However, your safety remains our top priority. There's several reasons why certain properties have not been released from orders, and they include restoring power and utility services, extinguishing hotspots, conducting controlled burns to mitigate future fires, and ensuring danger trees and damaged structures will not risk your neighborhood. The highest affected neighborhoods will be the longest to return home. We will keep you updated as frequently as possible, and our EOC Director will speak to that later. Updates to orders will be posted, as always, on cordemergency.ca as soon as they're available. Looking ahead to rebuilding and recovery, we recognize that it's going to be a long road ahead. Recovery will require time, investment, and commitment from all levels of government. While the past week and a half has tested us, it's also demonstrated the strength that lies here in the Central Okanagan communities. We are resilient and supportive of one another. United as a region, we will recover, rebuild, and restore. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Wooldridge. And if we could please have Sally Ginter, the Regional District Chief Administrative Officer and today's Emergency Operations Center Director.
Thank you, Chair Wooldridge. And good morning. As crews have been able to better and safely access the fire-damaged areas, additional site assessments have been conducted. As we anticipated, additional properties with significant to full loss have been identified, and the number of identified properties has increased from 181 to 189. Supporting the impacted residents is our priority. Only those residents in the following areas of West Kelowna and the Regional District of the Central Okanagan Electoral Area West, still on evacuation order, are asked to visit courtemergency.ca/property-info and recheck for property status updates. To be clear, this is West Kelowna Estates, properties with access from Bear Creek, Maine, and neighbourhoods along Westside Road. The residents in these areas can visit the online property information tool and recheck their property status updates. We need you to do this so we can collect your contact information. Concurrently, we will begin today to contact residents with more detailed information and next steps. These are for those that have suffered significant to full loss. These calls will continue over the next few days. No changes have been recorded in Kelowna, Lake Country, or Westbank First Nation. If you are in those areas, please do not use the tool. The updated breakdown properties with significant damage to full structure loss is now as follows. Lake Country 3, Kelowna 4, Westbank First Nation 19, West Kelowna 69, and the Regional District of Central Okanagan West Electoral Area 94. This number includes Lake Okanagan Resort as a single property. On this property at Lake Okanagan Resort, we have approximately 150 units that have been impacted. Lake Okanagan Resort property owners are encouraged to go on to courtemergency.ca. There are special instructions posted there to help them navigate the search tool so they can identify their property. Those who use the property notification tool again on courtemergency.ca will be prompted to fill in a contact information form. As I shared, individual calls to impacted property owners will commence today and will continue over the next few days. We will be providing additional information to the property owners and providing a clear line of sight on next steps. Only when it is safe to do so, officials will conduct escorted visits to those owners that have had significant to full structural loss of property in these affected areas. As we transition from response to recovery for the McDougall Creek wildfire, we are in the process of opening a resiliency center. We hope to have that open later this week. It is on WFN lands where affected residents will be able to seek supports, answers, and we will also be located near the emergency support services as they are too relocating. This location has been deemed as a convenient and appropriate location given the West Kelowna, Westbank First Nation, and Regional District Electoral Area West residents. I'd like to thank all those who did go on the tool and complete the information form. Because you have done so, you have expedited our ability to be accurate and to reach out. As we know, waiting for the status of your property has been very stressful. And it was really important that we shared what we knew when we knew it. We knew this would probably be a two-step process, and we were right. Please know that everyone involved, including the wonderful people I've had the privilege of working at the EOC, they're working as hard as they can to get you as much information, get you home as quickly as possible, and if going home isn't an option, then making sure you have the right supports. In closing, I will just say I have been in the EOC every day since this started. I've lost track of the number of happy birthdays we've sang for 30 seconds and then quickly got back to work. I've lost track of the number of people in that room whose adult children are getting ready to go away to university. And everyone thought they had 2 more weeks together before that major change. And I know that it's the same out there. Please know we're working hard and we're keeping all of you top of mind. Thank you.
Thank you, Sally. If we could please have Brad Litke, BC Wildfire Service Incident Command.
Good morning. Thanks for the opportunity to be here again. I'm happy to report there's been continued and further progress within the complex. On the ground today, we have a total of wildland firefighters of 203, structural firefighters 21, and operational field staff 31, bringing to a total of 255 personnel. Aircraft assigned to the complex is 12, and total pieces of heavy equipment is 30. There were further reductions in evacuation orders yesterday, which I'll let the fire chief speak to, and further recommendations given this morning. Our priority continues to be responder safety, getting the people of the Central Okanagan home, and the integration of re-entry and recovery teams into the incident. Yesterday, fire operations were disrupted by a drone in the fire area. Conservation officers with the BC Ministry of Environment were able to identify the operator and seize the drone. This is a reminder that these drones create a significant hazard to our aerial operations and our pilots and crews. Yesterday, the McDougall Creek fire challenged some of the fire guard in the Hidden Creek area. Planned ignitions in that area were not performed. That was the fire. For a weather forecast today, we're expecting temperatures to reach highs of 30 degrees Celsius with relative humidity values dropping into the high teens today, as low as 18%. Mainly sunny skies with local smoke, and northerly upslope winds should remain light with occasional gusts of 8 to 12 kilometers an hour, gusting to 20. Planned ignitions are being conducted in sections to ensure lower intensity fire behavior is used to minimize tree mortality of the working forest and the recreational forest. Based on the warming and drying trends, fire activity and fire behavior has been increasing throughout the afternoons. Specifically to the McDougall Creek wildfire, current size has been tracked at 12,635 hectares. It's still classed as out of control. Along with the incident management team, we have 158 firefighters, 12 operational field staff, BC Hydro technicians, and RCMP working throughout the day. Planned ignition work continues today. It's these ignition work which has allowed us to recommend that orders be rescinded to alerts by securing control lines with fire to the guard. Some of the planned ignitions will be located adjacent to West Kelowna, and if the site and weather conditions are favorable, crews and aerial resources will be conducting ignition operations along the west flank of the perimeter, continuing to secure our containment lines. Yesterday, crews successfully completed approximately 100-hectare planned ignition along the southwest corner of McDougall Creek, building off the previous day's ignition operations above Smith Creek, working north towards Powers Creek drainage. Today, crews will continue mopping up along the guard now that the perimeter has been brought down to a safer, more workable terrain. Along the south perimeter, crews will continue to patrol for hot spots, demobbing gear, and repositioning it to different parts of the fire, removing structural protection equipment that is no longer required. Along the north end of the fire, crews will be mopping up the perimeter in the Bald Range area where they used hand ignitions yesterday to tie the fire perimeter into a rock face. which is a natural containment feature. The 1,300 hectare planned ignition yesterday was postponed due to site and weather conditions. And today, if permitted, crews will be conducting ignitions for approximately 500 of the total 1,300 hectares along the west flank. A combination of aerial and hand ignition tactics will be used to remove unburnt fuel, the previously established by machine guard heavy equipment, and the free burning's edge. Ignition operations will be supported by ground crews, heavy equipment, aerial resources, working from previously established machine guards along the fire perimeter. The purpose of these planned ignitions is to remove unburnt fuel in an intentional way to secure these control lines. Based on current conditions, this unburnt fuel has the potential to burn on its own and in a significant and more active way. Crews will continue to mop up hotspots 100 feet inside the fire perimeter behind structures on West Kelowna, Petman Road, and West Lake Road. Moving over to Walroy, no growth there. Fire status continues to remain in being held status, and there's only alerts in place there. To the Clark Creek wildfire in Lake Country, no change in size, 360 hectares, and the status continues to be being held. Any resources that we've downsized in have been reallocated over to the McDougall Creek wildfire. I just wanted to take this opportunity to thank the communities of the Central Okanagan. We heard you, and you motivate us with your kind words and your support. I can confidently say you're being served by outstanding responders, the fire departments, RCMP, the EOC, ESS, and the various utilities. It's been a privilege to serve alongside them, and you're in good hands. BC Wildfire Service will continue to be here shoulder to shoulder with your responders until the threat has left your community. Thank you for this opportunity to be included with these press conferences.
Thank you very much, Brad. If we could please have Jason Brolund, West Kelowna Fire Chief, tonight.
Hi, good morning, everybody. Operational period number 24 for our fire department. So I'll be speaking to West Kelowna and West Bank First Nation structural fire department response. Today, as you've heard, is a day of continued transition. The hard work of structural firefighters now becomes the hard work of recovery. The firefight in our community has transitioned to a firefight in the hills above our community. Residents who have been out of their home are now returning slowly but surely to their homes. I said very early on in the fire that the minute people go out, we start thinking about how to get them back. I said that we have a plan and we were going to execute on it, and we've continued to do that. As you heard yesterday, thousands of people returned to their homes. And today I'm hopeful that even more will do so. There is still a lot of fire behind our community. We flew over quite a portion of it yesterday and were able to see that this fire will be with us for a while, not in the streets and neighborhoods, but in the hills above. As you heard from Brad, the hard work continues behind the community. It's not yet 100% safe in those areas, but great progress is being made. The fire, as many people witnessed yesterday and will likely see again today, is still close. But on the structural firefighting side, we've made tremendous progress. The many fire departments who have visited us here and helped out from out of town have now redeployed back to their communities or other fires. My firefighters said to me, "Chief, we will be the last ones on the line," and I can tell you that we were. Our fire department was the last department off the line when it came to structural firefighting in our community, and we now are conducting just patrols, particularly in neighborhoods that are returning or remain on evacuation order. A tough week is just beginning for many who are returning home or waiting to return home. When the going got tough, your firefighters were on the ground fighting it. And now for many, the going's going to get tough, and we ask you to take a page from our book and do the same. I'm being asked over and over again, when can we go home? And it's a very fair question, but the answer is simple. You'll be allowed to go home as soon as it's safe. I want to speak specifically to a couple neighborhoods. Firstly, the Smith Creek area. You heard from Brad that a number of ignitions are either ongoing or planned in this area, and that is going to secure the line between your neighborhood and the fire itself. As soon as that work's complete, and as soon as fire behavior allows, I expect that residents will be able to go back home in that neighborhood. This will be soon. There's a lot of resources being put to this, both on the fire line as well as in the EOC. I want to speak specifically to the other neighborhood in our community, which is still out, but for a very different reason. The West Kelowna Estates and Westside Road neighborhoods. The damage in the remaining evacuation order area is significant. You or your neighbors, in many cases, have lost their homes and lost everything. We're going to do it right, and we're going to do it safe. You heard from the EOC director that a number of things are being put in place to assure that. In that neighborhood, entire systems are having to be removed and rebuilt. The power lines, the power poles have burned, the lines are on the ground, the transformers are tipped over. All of that is being removed and it's being rebuilt. There are danger trees, which mean in any sort of windstorm, those trees could tip over, and we don't want people in the vicinity of them. There's an entire group of people who are out there addressing those. Some of you, your homes are undamaged, but the roads leading to them are not safe. So until those roads can be made safe, we can't get you back in to see your house. The return is going to be staged. It's going to be incremental, as we said, and it's going to be, in some cases, a lot by lot reentry. There are great staff at the EOC who are already working on that plan. We have compassion and sympathy for your loss, and we understand what you're going through, but we're making progress. And some of that progress I can share is that this morning, last night and this morning, Brad and I signed off on the lifting of the evacuation order for Rose Valley Elementary School. The school was saved through the hard work of firefighters from BC Wildfire and the fire departments who were there. And because of that, this morning the teachers were able to get back into the school and begin to set up their classrooms for the resumption of business there. That's a major milestone for the community. But in the neighborhoods nearby, in many cases, it will be days or in some even weeks before people are able to return to the most devastated spots. I've asked that the EOC begin to work on sharing some of those longer timelines to give people a better sense of what they're looking at. The best thing I can advise for those of you who are still on evacuation order or alert is that you sign up at courtemergency.ca. That's where you're going to find out immediately when those evacuation orders and alerts are lifted. So this is our final 10 a.m. media conference, and people are probably asking, what does the future hold? There is an ongoing firefight. We've heard a lot about planned ignitions. People are going to see smoke and fire, sometimes in what looks like very concerning amounts over the community. But there are a lot of professionals on the ground ready to deal with this. Our primary focus remains getting you home. It's been my honor and pleasure to come to all of you each morning at 10 a.m. I've heard from you that is the reason why a lot of this has worked so well. And it's, as I say, been my honor and pleasure to do so. Now it's time for our event to shift to others who are going to be leading this fight to get you back into your homes and to help our community recover. Planning for your return and keeping you safe, though, remains my #1 priority. But I will continue to be involved along with the other fire chiefs, but now at the EOC, helping that group to do the hard work that they have to do. But I also need to focus on West Kelowna Fire Rescue, on my firefighters and staff. Obviously, we've been through a lot, but haven't had any time to process that. I need to sit down with the firefighters from my department. We need to have a beer. We need to talk about all the things we saw, all of the things that we did. Their mental health is also my concern. The public did everything that I asked, and I just ask for your continued compassion for what we're going through. We are only 11 days into what is a historical natural disaster that our community faced. Let's continue to make our response and our recovery to that event historical as well. So last but not least, how can the public help? Obviously, continued and ongoing support. There are still many firefighters here on the ground doing this work. As we go forward, consider joining us or another volunteer group in the community. I'm going to be looking for paid-on-call firefighters this fall, and if you want to be involved and you want to be on this team, that is your opportunity. So on behalf of myself, the firefighters of West Kelowna Fire Rescue, thank you for your support. We're proud to have served the community. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief Brolund. And if we could please have Westside Fire Rescue Chief Ross Kocherowski.
Thank you and good morning. It's an honor to be here in person and not out in the field. I've had the chance to thank a lot of people, but I haven't had a chance to thank my team at Westside Fire Rescue, so I want to take that opportunity right now. Along with Deputy Chief Sean Barnes, from the beginning of this event, when the fire moved in and started impacting communities, they were there working tirelessly, saving homes, and doing everything they could to make sure that those who weren't impacted initially weren't impacted, as well as the Northwest Side community, that the fire didn't move up into those communities and affect them as well. I couldn't be more proud. I'm here today to provide an update for the electoral area west along Westside Road for the communities from Traders Cove to West Shore Estates. Wilson's Landing is still working jointly with Northwest Side Fire Rescue to support BC Wildfire services. Over the weekend, fire activity was minimal, mopping up hotspots and demobbing sprinklers, and this will continue today and likely into the future. Speaking to evacuations, I know this is what a lot of you are waiting for, and I do have some good news. But first off, I know a lot of you you're tired of hearing it. I'm tired of saying it, but we need your patience. We do not want to send anyone back into the area if it is unsafe. As soon as it is safe to return home, we will let you know. Talking to what I talked about at first, Lake Okanagan Resort and Fintry will be removed from the evacuation orders today and will move to an alert. I also want to reassure everybody that is in those alert areas that emergency crews are still available to support you in the case that there is another emergency, such as a first medical response or another fire or an incident within an incident. I want to express my support again today for those that are finding out now that their properties have been partially or fully lost during this fire. I want you to know that the firefighters that I get to work with, Wilson's Landing, Northwest Side, we are with you. We are part of your community and we are experiencing the same thing. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. And last but not least, if we could please have Jason Bedell, Emergency Support Services Supervisor.
Good morning and thank you. As we start to see more orders downgraded throughout our community, more evacuees are able to return to their homes. This is significantly reducing the strain on our ESS resources to provide support to our community. Supports will remain available to evacuees who remain on order and whose residence is uninhabitable. To be clear, ESS supports are not available for those who have insurance. Again, I urge evacuees to contact their insurance provider as soon as possible if you have not done so, for supports or potential reimbursements for out-of-pocket expenses. Our ESS volunteers follow provincial policies. They are unable to backdate supports for evacuees. If you have concerns or questions, again, please contact the Provincial ESS Information Line on 1-800-585-9559. As we begin the transition from response into recovery, ESS will continue to support those long-term evacuees, and ESS will be a part of the Resiliency Centre once that becomes operational. And finally, I just want to once more pass on my heartfelt thanks to all of the ESS volunteers from the RDCO and across the province who have selfishly stood up to support our community. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jason. As we've done in the days previously now, that our speakers have finished, we'll be able to take questions from the floor and online. We'll be limiting to one question and a follow-up from each of the participants. And I also wanted to make known that after the conference is finished, if there's people who would like to do additional interviews, we can do that in the lobby as well. And Mayor Milsom is also with us today. So let's start with the mic.
Kent Mulgat from Kelowna now. So for people at La Casa, would they have access along Westside Road to get there? Or would they go through a checkpoint and give an address? How does that work?
So we haven't worked out the details for La Casa and Fintry. More information will come out as that becomes available. It is not safe to go through the south. We have power lines down still. We have danger trees still. We've got a lot of things that will affect that safe passage. So you will likely have to go up through the north, but we will be facilitating those people returning to those communities through information today.
Haley, do we have somebody online that would like to ask a question?
We do. I see Rob Monroe. He's always first online. So Rob, I'll give you a chance to unmute your mic and ask your question.
I think this is probably for Brad Litsky. I just want to talk about the controlled burns a bit.
Okay, go ahead, Bob.
Okay, go ahead.
Rob, are you still there?
Sorry, it muted on me. Again, sorry about that. Brad, I know the control fires are intended to control this fire as it burns so that you can get a handle on it. Some of them are huge areas. How much thought is given in while you're doing this to, in a sense, fireproofing or fire smarting that area from future fires for future years?
I think I understand your question. There is a little bit of crossover there. Oh, sorry, we got some feedback. Okay. Really, when it comes down to the incident at this point, ignitions come with specialists that are trained and experienced individuals that work alongside operational staff. There's written plans. There's consultation in some cases. It's subject to the size of it. What that's going to benefit us in the future is often when we're fighting fires in the forested areas, if there's previous burned areas, we'll be looking at those burned areas as potential anchor points. Because of the fire has previously gone through, it has removed a bunch of the fuel and will take the intensity out of a new wildfire moving into it. So as a result of a lot of the ignitions that we're conducting along guards with aircraft and personnel, is those areas will have received in a roundabout way a fuel treatment for the future. So the The intent is, again, to remove the fuel. We're not trying to remove the forest. We're trying to make sure that we have moderate intensity burns to reduce mortality to some of the forest itself. So from a future perspective, once we have control of these wildfires, it will aid in prevention or aid in the reduction of fire behavior for the future. I'm not sure if that completely answered your question, Rob.
Rob, did you have a follow-up question? You can just unmute your mic.
Yes, I think that's basically answered it. Thanks, Brad, I appreciate that. I'm not sure who this one is for. Any idea on timelines that the evacuated residents whose homes are destroyed will be able to get in and do those tours? And is there any thought that the media will be able to get in there at some point for the same time?
We can ask Sally Ginter to answer that one for you.
So to confirm, I think that it's two questions in there. One is a timeline on the tours. We refer to them as visits. And the second is the role of the media. Is that correct?
I believe so.
Okay. As shared earlier, we are currently reaching out and connecting with the property owners where significant damage and or loss has occurred. We are also in flight. We have the resources that we are pulling together, such as the physical resources, the transportation, but also, again, the psychosocial emotional resources that we will make sure are with the property owners. At the same time, we are compiling the information that homeowners are going to need to have as they navigate their next steps. I think we can all agree that the loss of one's home is probably one of the most horrible things that can happen. So we are really mindful that the first persons that should go to see lost homes are the ones whose home is lost. We will follow up separately with the media on what our plans are to ensure you get the information you need, and the homeowners and their losses remain our first priority.
Thank you, Sally. Is there another question at the podium?
Hi, Rob Gibson with Castanet. I'm not sure who wants to take this one. I know you kind of touched on it earlier. We have a question from one of our audience members. Lives in Smith Creek, frustrated by the Upper Talus Shannon Estates returning home. Maybe you could just clarify what the back burning and the other types of weather issues and those kinds of sensitivities that are keeping people out of their houses. Maybe give us an idea when they might be back.
So I spoke earlier specifically to the Smith Creek neighborhood. It is the one on the southernmost end of the fire. And as it sits today, it is the one that remains most exposed to the risk that the fire behind the community still presents. So neighborhoods such as Shannon Woods and Talus Ridge, the Wildfire Service has done an incredible amount of work over the last several days to build fire guards, to conduct planned ignitions, and tie all of that together so that there's a level of comfort in those neighborhoods that should the fire challenge those guards, it can be held and the neighborhoods aren't at risk. Smith Creek, being a little more southern, is a neighborhood where that work is still ongoing. There were planned ignitions that took place in that general vicinity yesterday. And there's more work to be done to tie in fire guards that have been constructed with those planned ignitions and ensure that that neighborhood is as safe as the other ones. I can assure you that I saw with my own eyes yesterday that work is ongoing. The public saw it with the plumes of smoke that rose above the community in the vicinity of that neighborhood. Based on that work, we're going to be able to let that community home soon. It's going to be, if everything goes well, if the fire behavior is as anticipated, it's going to be soon. It's a matter of days, if not shorter, in that neighborhood. So be patient. Bear with the wildfire service and us, and know that when you do go home, there's a level of comfort there that a lot of work has been put into making sure that your neighborhood is safe.
Yeah, just, Jason, before you leave there, you talked a little bit about the idea that you're going to be seeing some activity, guys fighting this fire possibly until the snow flies. Is that accurate?
I think it's going to be with us for a while. There's a lot of fire still behind the community in the upper reaches. I think that the community itself has been well secured, and we'll monitor the weather, for challenges to that. I'm optimistic that, the humidity overnight has been higher. The weather suggests in the coming days some moisture. All of these things are going to help, but there's still an incredible amount of work to be done by Brad and his team behind the community. So we're going to see those days when there is increased fire behavior. There is, columns of smoke behind the community, but we've got lots of help to deal with that.
Thank you, Jason. Kate, it looks like we have another question online.
Yep, thank you, Jody. Just before I go to the question on the line, I want to repeat the emergency support services info line so that everyone on the line gets that number. So it's 1-800-585-9559. Thank you. And we'll go to the next question on the line. Chuck Chang, you can unmute your microphone and ask your question.
Hi, thank you. Chuck Chang with the Canadian Press. First question is addressed to Regional District Chair Lloyd Woodridge. I was wondering if the Regional District is looking for any sort of commitment in terms of help for the region to rebuild from the federal and or provincial governments, and whether you have received any sort of commitment so far from either of those levels of government regarding the rebuilding effort. Thank you.
Thanks, Chuck, for the question. Obviously, a lot of discussions going on over the last week with various visits from the Premier and the Prime Minister. And what we've relayed is it's premature at this point to have valuations completed for all of the infrastructure that's been damaged or lost at this time. We've relayed to all the ministers as well as the leaders that we need sustained infrastructure funding specifically for rural and remote areas that lack tax base for rebuilding. That will continue to be what we push the provincial and federal government for. And further to that, we're asking the province to look at our emergency operations center model from a year-round perspective. Right now, it's a function off the side of many desks of senior leaders through partner municipalities and First Nations. And we are looking to the government to help us fund that for an annual function. But the biggest focus for us will be continuing to look for infrastructure dollars to rebuild what's been damaged or lost. And in coming months, as we move through recovery, we'll have a better picture on what that will look like.
Thank you. And I do also have a follow-up for Mr. Brolund. I know Mr. Brolund mentioned earlier about entire systems having to be removed and rebuilt in parts of West Kelowna. I was wondering if he can speak a little bit to kind of what type of infrastructure damage are we seeing from this fire so far, other than power system. Are you seeing any with the roads, any additional utilities damage? Just to give, is there a way of giving us a sense of the infrastructure damage that has been done by these fires to the local community? Thank you.
Yeah, we are certainly seeing some infrastructure damage to roadways. A lot of that assessment remains underway. One of the big focuses for us still to be looked at is drainage and runoff as we move into the fall season when we expect to see rains. Obviously, the ground's capacity to absorb water has been changed in the burned areas, so we're looking at that infrastructure is being looked at by the professionals on our public works team. We're also looking at the ability to deliver clean drinking water to these neighborhoods. Obviously, like our areas around our reservoirs have been burned and challenged, and there's many experts looking at things at that level as well. Far and away, the most damage to infrastructure has been due to the burning of poles in the neighborhoods. And the minute those poles are touched by fire, they need to be replaced for everyone's safety. So the cooperation that we've had from BC Hydro and its contractors, as well as TELUS and Shaw, Rogers, the other telecommunications providers, has been second to none. They are already well into these neighborhoods, removing and replacing, and we're only seeing the farthest reaches where they're still in that removing process. But it's a big job for these men and women to get in there and rebuild from the beginning that power infrastructure.
Thank you, Chief. That looks like that's it for today. Thank you very much again to the media and partners online with us that have shared in this journey over the last 9 live conferences. Please continue to look for information from the Emergency Operations Center. We'll still be supporting communities from there as we transition to recovery, and particularly over the next days and months as we remove the last of the evacuation orders and alerts. Other than that, you can continue to also get information from each of the individual municipal organizations and West Bank